Howdy folks, today we're going to be taking a comprehensive look at what is required to do a heads, cam, and intake swap on any small block pushrod Ford. I personally am going to be applying this information to this 91 Foxbody that I'm getting ready to do a GT40 heads and upper and lower intake swap on. However, this information will apply to aftermarket aluminum heads, aftermarket upper and lower intakes. It'll apply to pickups with small block Fords or Rangers you've already swapped the small block into and you want to do a heads, cam, and intake swap on. This information will apply. I'm going to go through all of the parts required to do something like this, and we're going to get a rolling tally of the cost for all these parts so you know what you're getting yourself into before you get too far down the rabbit hole. Okay, to start things off here, how I'm going to lay this out for you is I have an Excel spreadsheet I've started for the various parts and the cost that each part is going to run us in order to do a heads, cam, and intake swap. Now, not all of these parts will apply to everyone's situation, so take what you will from this and use it, apply it to your specific scenario. I'm going to be talking specifically about the parts I need, which you may not need all of them. The two sites that we're going to be using here, and neither of these sites have paid me to talk about them, however I've over the years had really good luck with both of them, is Summit Racing, and I'm also going to be using Late Model Restoration's website to gather prices for our list. So to start things off, and now this is again specific to my situation, I'm going the nostalgic GT40 route. So I had to buy the heads and the upper and lower intake. I was not fortunate enough to find these parts laying around in a junkyard. You may be able to do that. I wasn't. I had to buy them from a gentleman. So I've got my GT40 heads / intake, and that cost me $800. This price is obviously going to vary as well. The prices are all over the place with these things these days, so keep that in the back of your mind when you're shopping. This was just how much my setup cost me just to get me the rusty and crusty old parts. Now, I would say the next step you'd want to take is you probably want to drop these parts off to a machine shop. Again, machine shop costs are going to vary depending on your area. Mine aren't that cheap where I am, but take this for what it's worth just to give us a rough idea. So, machine shop costs. Now, what's going to get factored into this, again, may vary for your situation, but for me, I'm going to get the heads trued up. So the business end of the heads, I want a thou or so taken off of them. Whatever it takes to make them nice and true and flat, I am going to request that be done. Check the valves, do a valve grind. We may have to replace some of the valves, I don't know. Do a valve grind, and possibly some port work. I'm going to look into the costs of that. But for what all this is worth, I'm going to estimate that my cost here will be about $500. You know what? I'm going to throw an extra $50 in there because I also want to get the heads hot tanked. They might include that in my machine work, but I also want to drop the intake off and get it hot tanked. It's filthy and disgusting, and I don't want to be bothered with hand cleaning all that stuff. So let's say about $550. Now, another part of this is you're going to want to upgrade the springs on your GT40 setup. This will not apply to folks that are going the brand new aluminum head route. For example, the AFR 165s I have on my coupe, I ran with the springs that came on the heads as part of the package. However, you're going to need a spring kit, or I would recommend you getting a spring kit for your heads, and you'd want to drop that spring kit off with your heads as they go in to get the machine work done so they can put the springs on the valves while they're doing all the work. So let's see what a spring kit's worth. Trick Flow. And you don't have to use the Trick Flow springs. These are the springs that I'm going to use. I think these are, the part number is like a 2500 something. Yeah, there we go. Trick Flow spring kit. And this comes with New valve springs, valve stem seals, valve locks, shim kit, so on and so forth. These are the springs that I'm going to go with. So 187 bucks. Let's put that in here. Okay, so that more or less looks after the heads and possibly the cleaning costs of our intake. And now those will be at the machine shop. I'm trying to lay this out in a chronological order for you so you don't, tear everything off of your car and then go, oh man, I got to sit around and wait for the machine shop. This way you can keep your car in running condition, go and drop the stuff off with the bits and pieces that may be required, i.e. the spring kit, and say, here you go. Maybe they need 2 weeks, right? And you can still be driving and enjoying your car while all that's going on. So once we've got that dropped off, now there's some incidentals we need to worry about with respect to the intake. Again, this is more in my case with the GT40 stuff that I've bought, but I'm gonna need a bolt kit to bolt the upper intake to the lower intake. I'm also gonna need a new bolt kit, which I would recommend for everyone, even if someone's given you bolts with, say, a second-hand intake or whatever. Some of the bolts that go into the heads and the block are coolant. They have coolant in them, and the bolts and the threads and stuff can be rusty and shot. So I'd just say, if you're going to be placing an order to any, like Summit or LMR, make sure you get a bolt kit for your intake too. And now I'm not sure if they have it as a kit where you get upper and lower bolts, but we'll have a look here. So intake bolts 86 to 95. Okay, doesn't look like it. Here's the lower, their ARP 45 bucks. See if there's any difference between that and, say, an OE kit. Here's an OE kit from 50 Resto that also comes with a gasket, 39 bucks. I'm thinking we're gonna need gaskets here coming up anyway. I might just splurge for the ARP kit for the extra few bucks. And it's always good to estimate on the high side of things too. I should have actually, maybe we'll add a little line in here, because we're going to need a head bolt kit as well. We don't need that to take to the machine shop with us. This is obviously comes to effect when we go to bolt the heads on, but we're gonna need a head bolt kit. Even if you have, let's say you're going the GT40 route like me and you took the heads off an old Explorer, don't reuse the bolts. Just do yourself a favor and get a good, tight, non-stretch set of bolts. So let's go head bolts. So there's going to be ARP options again for 60 bucks. Yeah, look at this. So here's a head gasket and bolt kit for 60 bucks. I mean, this is all going to be your personal preference. If you want to go ARP, great. If you want to get the gaskets thrown in there as well, great. I think I'm going to go the ARP kit just for fun. I'm going to overestimate my costs a little bit. You could also go the stud kit for almost 3 times the cost. I don't know. You definitely, if you're going GT40, you don't need to go the stud kit. But again, personal preference. Whatever melts your butter here. So the reason I'm going to go this ARP kit and not go the gasket kit is I'm probably going to order just a full, what's the word I'm looking for? Felpro gasket kit and be done with it. Because we're going to need gaskets for all this stuff too. So ARP 60 bucks for the head bolt kit. Okay, we got hardware. And again, it's something else you may want to consider too, is like placing one order rather than a bunch of orders. This is especially required for me because I'm all the way up in Canada, so you want to make the most of your shipping costs to try to keep your costs low or as low as possible. While we're still in the must-haves, you're gonna have to think about a throttle body, okay? So again, let's jump back here into LMR. Throttle body and spacer. So going for a bigger one, BBK throttle body 219. SVE's got a 70 mil, same size as the BBK. I think for what it's worth, and in my case, going the GT40 route, I think I'd be, doing myself. I'd just be spending unneeded money. I'll look at this SVE one, the 70 mil, and the EGR spacer. You could always delete your EGR. Again, there's so many different routes that are going to vary for each individual, but in my case, throttle body, 200 bucks, I'm going the SVE route. And just so I can reference this, we'll call it a 70 mil, 200. Now, I mentioned earlier gaskets, okay? Which gasket kit you buy is again going to vary because some may leave the motor in, some may take it out. In my case, I'm taking the motor out, so I'm just going to buy a full small block Ford Fel-Pro gasket kit. Gasket kit 5.0. Let's go to Summit for this one. 302 Ford gasket kit. I want the one piece oil pan gasket. Here we go. Okay, I think this guy, yeah, intake, valve cover gaskets, everything. This looks like the one I'm going to go with. 103 bucks. So again, maybe you don't need to go to this length. It's not a terrible thing to order the full kit like I just did and have some laying around. You never know what you're going to need. Okay, so we got our gaskets. What else do we need to consider here? We're going to need, potentially need push rods. Actually, maybe I'll leave push rods alone for a minute. We're going to need new lifters. You might, it's up to you if you want to run new lifters or not. I definitely 100% will. So lifters, let's go back here. We're going to look at a set of roller lifters 5.0. Ford Performance, OEM, what's the difference here? 85 to 95. I don't know what the difference in these two is. $50 difference for sure. Direct replacement. I don't know what the difference is here. Regardless, let's just click on the more expensive ones. I say all the time, it's always better to overestimate than underestimate. So 185 bucks for lifters. Okay, starting to run out of room here, and this is getting expensive fast. This is the thing I guess I really wanted to hit home with folks on this video is these heads cam and intake swaps. If you want to do them to the length that I'm going to, where you're like checking all the boxes and making sure everything and anything is looked after, it gets pricey quick. I hate to break it to you, it's not a cheap endeavor. So lifters, oh, rockers. We're going to need new rockers, unless you want to run whatever you got. But even in the case that you're running an aftermarket aluminum head, they're not going to come with rockers. So let's just, for what it's worth, say you want to run rockers. In the GT40 route, well, mine has them. They're the stamped non-roller style that are on it. I'm not going to be using those. I'm just going to put a decent set of rockers on there. Some things need to be considered here, specifically what cam you're running. Do you want 1.5, 1.6, 1.7? Like what length roller rockers do you want to run with? I'm going to run a 1.6, I believe. I'm still figuring some of this out, so. And all of this has to do with which cam you're going to run. This is where, if you don't know, I've said this in a lot of my other videos, if you don't know what you're doing when it comes to this stuff, you want to seek some expert advice. You can go through the forums and try to find your way through this and teach yourself as you go based on what other people have ran. However, you're never 100% guaranteed that it's going to work the way you want it to. So keep that in the back of your mind. I would hate to see you go to all this work, turn the key all excited to go for a drive on a late Sunday night when you've done all the work, buttoning it all up, and bang, piston to valve, whatever. Okay, so just make sure you do your homework on all this stuff. Okay, let's go 1.6 roller rockers. Probably going to be lots to pick from. Yep. Trick flow stud mount, comp camps, comp stud mount. Looks like there's only 4 to pick from here. We could always look at Summit too. 1.6 roller rockers Ford. Trick flow $398. Looks like about the same price over at LMR. Summit Racing, so their non-name brand or their own name brand's a little cheaper. Comp fits 3/8 inch. See, these are some of the things you're gonna have to figure out, like what size stud is on your head for mounting the roller rocker to. Comp, Heartland, Summit. Well, you can buy cast. This is a heck of a lot cheaper. Cast roller tip rockers. So again, in light of time and for what it's worth, let's look at 3/8 inch stud Ford. Let's go with the comp cams, 200 bucks. This comes with everything you need, the nuts. Okay, yeah, 200 bucks. Okay, we're starting to look better here, and I think we're starting to come together. Now we need to look at our cam. Now I'm still trying to decide which cam I want to use. However, for what all that's worth, I'm just going to go with one that I'm familiar with that I ran in my 92 coupe. Let's look at the Comp Cam 266. Does LMR have it? Looks like it. XFI, no. Extreme Energy. See, for what this is all going to be worth, I guess the prices don't vary. So I'm not going to get into the math and everything of like which cam you want or which cam you want to run. It's all going to depend on your own specific preferences and how you want to drive your car, where you want the power to come on, so on and so forth. And they're all the same price. So for what it's worth, let's just call our cam costs are going to be around 400 bucks. So we'll factor that in here. Okay. I think that for the most part should get us to where we need to be. Now, some of the auxiliary items that a person's going to want to consider are, do you want to upgrade your injectors? Or do you even want to replace your 19-pound stock injectors that are probably high miles and everything else? I would say you probably should, because you're going to have to remove your intake to get at all of them. While all that's out, you might as well change them over, and you might as well upgrade to, say, a set of 24-pound injectors at this time. And why I say all that is injectors will run at whatever amount, whatever pressure that they're being told or they're demanding by the computer and your throttle response. They will run at that amount of fuel. Now, you don't want to go out and buy like 100-pound injectors. I mean, maybe some people would say you could. I don't know. I'm no expert in all this, okay, guys? All I know is, you know, there's an operating range for these injectors. Don't overbuy and don't underbuy, but it's not a bad thing to buy up at least one stage, okay? So 19 pounds are stock, 24s is the next, then 36, so on and so forth. Depending on the plans for your car, I would probably say do yourself a favor and just buy a set of 24 pounds from the 19s. It's not that big a jump. You could get away with running 24s and a low boost supercharger down the road potentially. Again, this is getting into like very technical stuff, but I'd say something you want to consider is probably give yourself a set of injectors while you're going to all this trouble. So I definitely will be, and I'll be doing 24 pound. So let's see what a set of 24 pounds are worth. Ford 24 pound with adapters, $254. Let's just see what our options are here. The Bosch one's a little cheaper and don't need the adapter. Pretty sure when I did my coupe, I went with these with the adapter. They're made by Ford, or Ford's at least branded them. $255. Let's just factor that into our auxiliary costs. While you're at it, you may want to put a new fuel pump in your car. Wouldn't be a terrible. It is a bit of a maintenance item that you could do. It's not 100% necessary, but maybe something you want to consider. So fuel pump, let's look at 190. Walbro, yeah, pretty cheap fun. What's this? BBKs for 170, or a Walbro 105. New sock, new everything. Let's factor that in there too, $105. Some other things you want to consider: auxiliary items. Again, paint your engine, right? Especially if you've got it out. You might want to do some of that stuff. So let's factor in $50, give or take, for paint. Like I said earlier, water pump. Let's check that out on here quick. Water pump. Motorcraft 110. Mustang factory replacement. Again, you got some options here, but let's just call it 110. Power steering pump I mentioned. You could change this at any time, really, guys. It's not the worst job to do, but while all this is out, let's check it out. $90.93 Motorcraft, $175. Factor that in too. Okay, another auxiliary item here, a timing set. Okay. Not 100% necessary, but you might want to take a look at one. So timing chain, let's just look up timing chain. Here we go. Count $72. Ford Performance 200, new retainer and a pin. Again, it's gonna come down to what you're wanting to spend and what you want to put. Is this, oh, this is a double roller. Oh, they're both double rollers. Okay, let's look at this one. We'll try to cut our costs a little bit. 72 bucks for the comp. Okay, oh, and one other potentially must-have, potentially auxiliary item. I'm going to put it as a must-have. Push rods. Now, this is the question I get asked a lot. What push rods did you run when you did your heads cam and intake swap on your 92 coupe? Every situation's different, okay? Depending on so many variables, like your gasket that you used can be factored into this too, okay? Because every gasket's a little bit different thickness, and that's in turn going to change how your rocker arm contacts your valve. I'm going to try to put a picture in here for you guys to show you how you go about doing all this. I wished I would have videotaped it when I did my coupe, however I didn't. I will videotape it when I do the convertible swap over. But for what it's worth, in the center of your valve, you want the contact patch of your roller tip rocker to be as dead center as possible, okay? And how you do that is you get an adjustable push rod that you can vary the length of while you're, so you bolt everything together, you put your adjustable push rod in, you bolt one of your rockers on, and you rotate the engine while varying the length of the push rod. And in doing so, you're going to change where that roller tip contacts the valve, and it's going to move back and forth like this. So you take a Sharpie and you color in the tip of your valve. Again, I'll show you all this firsthand when we go to do all this, but you're trying to get that roller tip rocker to contact your valve dead center, and the length of your push rod determines all that. So once you get your adjustable push rod set at a point where you're contacting dead center on that valve, you take your push rod out and you measure it, and then you order your push rods. Sorry, I hope that made sense. All that said, we're going to need a set of push rods most likely, so let's just factor that in. Oh, look at that. LMR actually sells an adjustable one right here with a lifter. 25 bucks. So you might want to factor in one of these to your overall costs. But here, comp cams, hardened push rods. I don't know what length these are. You probably got to pick your length, unless this is just stock length. Regardless, oh yeah, length, 6.248 inches. Okay, we don't know our length yet. We need to figure our length out, but for what it's all worth, we're going to factor this into our cost, 41 bucks. Okay, trying to think if this is everything we need now. I hope I'm not missing anything. Oh, you know what? Other must-haves, let's throw this in there too. This will be very variable. However, we need coolant and oil. And probably a filter. I don't know. What do you think? 100, let's call it $125 for that. We should probably get plugs, wires, cap, rotor. Okay, so we'll just call that tune up. You may as well start with a like fresh everything. Let's just see if they got a tune-up kit. I know this is being very generic, but yeah, here we go. Stock tune-up kit, 115 bucks. For our case, we'll call it 150 because we're probably not going with stock stuff. Okay, moment of truth. Let's total all this up. Equals sum of all this. Ready? Drum roll. $3,100. Okay, may as well, while we're at it here, let's total up the sum of our auxiliary items, potential auxiliary items. $767. I guess the point of saying all that and making it as dramatic as possible is this isn't cheap fun, okay? Like, this stuff adds up quick. And now this is just, I very well could have even missed 1 or 2 items for what that's worth. But to give you an idea, this is why I say all the time in any of my videos discussing like heads, cam, and intake, this stuff gets out of hand fast. And I will say, granted, you do not need to buy all of this stuff, okay? It's totally your own preference, how you want to do this. I like the peace of mind that comes with knowing that, say, a new set of lifters are in and I didn't reuse those lifters. Peace of mind with new set of push rods, all that stuff, especially when you consider how much time and effort goes into removing all this stuff just so you can get at these parts. Oh, did I put that in there? No, I didn't. Could throw an oil pump in as an auxiliary item. Like I said, pulling the motor. I'll pull the pan off and put a new oil pump in. They're probably, I don't know, $75, $100. It adds up real fast. And maybe you want to get after tidying up some of your wiring while you're in there. And you want to go and get a couple bags of looming, right? And tidy all that up. Maybe you break some clips. Or you break some bolts. There's so many things that need to be considered when you're doing a heads, cam, and intake swap, and it never goes as planned. I mark my words when I say that. Something always happens. So don't get discouraged, but this is most likely what you're looking at if you're going to be going down this road. Thanks so much for watching my breakdown on heads, cam, and intake upgrades and some of the costs you may incur while you're doing this. If you want to learn more about GT40 heads and or intakes, make sure you check out this video right here.